when I went to your TED talk, the first ever TED talk, that's where I met you. I was getting you a glass of wine. I was like, do you want a glass of wine? I was like, yeah, yeah. So I went down to the bar, got you a glass of wine. When I was walking back upstairs, the wine, my handbag slipped down my arm and jolted. I had this like cream dress on. I got red wine all down me. I was like,
No,
here's
I'm
your
so
wine.
sorry.
And then check this out. I train it back to Chippenham. I get on my car really late at night and I come back home. I get stopped by the police and breathalyzed, and I've got red wine like all spilled out.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
That's our story. This is the story about how I can,
That's crazy.
how funny is that? So you hosted, it was my first ever TED talk I'd been to.
Do you know what? I was so
brilliant.
busy, and still after that, I was still trying to like connect people, still trying to do things. I don't think I even drank the wine in the end because I just was so busy. And that's what's so ridiculous about that. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's mental.
It all came out. Like all the red wine came out. I can still wear the dress. It's absolutely fine.
Well, that's
But
good.
yeah, I've
Well, that's
never been
crazy.
stopped by the police and breathalyzed.
And what a
before.
night for that to first happen. That is unbelievable. Well, I'm so glad that ended happily. Otherwise, like, I'd have felt forever guilty. That would have been like, you know, you trying to do me a favor and be like, oh, well, thanks for the great show. Here's a glass of wine. And now I've got DUI. Like, I'd be like, I'd be dying. That's horrible.
Oh, brilliant. So
well,
there you
glad.
go. Hello, Sabrina. Let's go from there. Like, I'm really excited for you to be on the podcast. This is a play leading podcast, and we're talking about this whole thing of pausing, playing, and connecting, because I believe it's a way we can live. We're all built for connection. I know you're massive on connection, but there's something about building deeper connections, really feeling heard and seen and understood, because the word misunderstood comes across a lot when you're a woman in business and you're one of those amazing female entrepreneurs doing your thing in this kind of crazy world, and you're navigating these things. You've been doing it for a while, haven't you? Tell me about kind of what you do. I don't normally start like this, but you know, where's your focus? What do you spend your time doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that easy a question for me. This is why when people say, what do you do? I'm always like, well, where do I start? So it is an interesting question. I guess the simplest answer is that for the last 10 plus years now, I've been running an agency. So I've been running a creative agency. I've been in the sort of marketing, branding, creative website scene for about 15 years. And so the agency that I've been running, you know, been doing it for over 10 years. But during that time, it's not really been, like you said, about deep, meaningful connections. For me, it's not just been about running the agency. I've got some clients who have been with me for 7-8 years, for example. Like, you know, I believe in making those deep connections. I've got other agency friends that I've known for several years. I've helped along the journey. There were other people I've met at events that, again, have kept in contact with for all that time, and helped each other grow with their business and things like that. So for me, it's always been about connecting people, and I've loved that. And so that's where my focus is now. I recently launched a members club for entrepreneurs, and the vision came from the fact that I was trying to find a great place where I could connect with other people and, you know, meet other people, have meaningful connections, and I just couldn't find anywhere like that. I think that a lot of networking, you know, is rushed. It's like, you know, you go to an event and people hand a business card, or they quickly say what they do, and, you know, they either have to go home or they just add you on LinkedIn. You forget who you spoken to, and it isn't really a proper, really meaningful connection. So I've met a lot of people along the way, but there's very few people I've deeply connected to, and every single one of those has been the most amazing relationship. Like, whether it's not necessarily that they give me loads of clients, but actually it's more than that. They introduce me to the right sort of people at the right time, whether that's someone who I need help with in terms of helping with my mindset, or whether it's a new employee, or whether it's just someone to talk to who gets what I'm going through. Like, it's so much more than just a referral. And I think people just talk about referrals, but for me, it's those meaningful connections. These are people who are going to be invited to my wedding, like, that I've met at a networking event. Do you know what I mean? This is like, in fact, one of them I met at a networking event is actually my bridesmaid. So it's like, and in fact, on that note, my husband to be, I actually met at a networking event. So, you know, so when I think about it, when I talk about deep and meaningful connections and real networking, I mean it. I didn't even think about it like that, but I literally have lifetime connections for my networking because I'm marrying one of the guys I met at a networking event. So it's like, and that's what I mean. It's like, I'm not asking you to go and hook up with every single person you meet at a networking event, but what I'm saying is that if you do things in the right way, you genuinely meet people that you can be connected with for life and have a relationship way more than just a quick referral or a quick, like, you know, coffee and be done with it. And so for me, that's what it's all about. It's creating a community of people who want that, who share that vision, who are in it to make real friends along the way, not just do business together in this, like, you know, shallow way. It's actually like you genuinely want to support each other and see each other succeed.
I love that. Yeah. And you've got a real passion for this kind of in-person thing. There's some kind of energy that goes on, isn't there? When you're in the room, you kind of vibe with certain people and not with others. Can you kind of describe it? Is there some kind of formula to it? How do you kind of, okay, I'm asking you 300 questions at the same time here. How do you set the scene? Just pause and go, okay, you're holding a space for all these people to come into this space and network and meet and connect. What brings a sense of, you know, deep and meaningful connection as opposed to this kind of heightened anxious state? Because I remember that state going into networking things thinking, I've only got 1 minute to say what I do. I don't know how I'm going to do this. What if I forget? And what if I don't say this? And you're trying to eat breakfast and the things coming round to you and you're thinking, whoa, oh man. So what happens in your events? Like, how do you facilitate this beautiful connection and people feeling at ease, for example?
Do you know, it's a really good question, because I've asked myself that recently, because I've had a few people come up to me and say, I've been to so many of your events and they are not like anything else, and they like the way you run events is amazing, and you know, these are people who go to events all the time, and I'm just sitting there thinking, what do I do? I don't actually know what I do, but I'd love to replicate that all the time. And you could probably answer that better than I can. You've been to one of my events, you've soaked up that atmosphere. But I guess all I can say is that I know exactly the sort of meetings you're talking about, because I've done them, and they are intimidating. They are so perfunctory. You're doing it in such a shallow level, and I just don't really believe in that. I think the difference is with the events that I run is that, I guess, if people turn up, they can also see how the host behaves, right? And I don't show up in a very formal, very, you know, in a way that's sort of like, you must show who you are and what you do and tell you your 60-second elevator pitch. Most of the time I'm just talking to them about life and dogs, usually. Like, it's like, you know, I'm just having normal yeah,
there's no performance anxiety.
Absolutely.
And that's very like the kind of parenting thing, you know, when I'm talking to parents about how to be a connected sort of parent, it's therapeutic kind of manner. It's slowing things down, it's being accepting and open and not so prescriptive, right? So you've got that kind of
absolutely. And maybe that's what it is. And maybe that's what it is because I've had so many years of teaching, and I teach classrooms full of young kids. I talk to kids in the same way I talk to people at networking events, minus the swearing, obviously, and maybe inappropriate chat. But in that same sort of energy, I give the kids that same, you know, feeling of being at ease and feeling very comfortable. And, you know, most of the kids I teach come in and give me a hug every time they see me. They're really sweet and they just love being like around me. And I just want them to feel comfortable and also feel like they're not being judged. And I think that's the thing about these networking events. I walk into them feeling like I'm going to be judged. And like you said, that anxiety, feeling like, oh, if I say the wrong thing or I don't come across well in that 60 seconds, people are going to think I'm not worth talking to. And I make sure that everyone in the room knows that they are worth talking to. Every single person has got something to offer, no matter where they've come from, where they are on their journey. They will have something to offer. Their insights in whatever they do is valuable. And, you know, even if they've just started their business yesterday, I believe that they can still offer some value and some advice to someone who's been in business 20 years, because it's just the way they think about things. And, you know, they might approach things in a really innovative way. And I want to strip away all that judgment. And I think that I make that very, very clear, that there should be no judgment at all, no matter where you come from, how much money you have, whatever the color of your skin is, or gender, or any of that sort of stuff. And I think people can tell that's what I'm like, and then they can see how I am with other people, that then there's this kind of sense of ease in the room. And you know, like I said, you've been to my events, and you can tell that also. I think that when you run events that way, and when I advertise that that's the attitude, and like my club's called No Bullshit, right? So I'm all about no bullshit and being really true to yourself. And I think that when you see that description, it attracts the right sort of people as well. And I feel like those people who are a bit pretentious, or are a bit, you know, they're not gonna want to be there. They're gonna be like, this is bullshit. Like, they will think it's bullshit, even though it's like called No Bullshit. So I think it naturally filters out those sort of people, and then you're going to have a better environment anyway. If people are all kind of a similar sort of values, and treat each other with respect, then it's just going to be a naturally better environment.
I love that. I did want to touch on that actually with you today, because I've been seeing a lot of your LinkedIn posts over the last few months that I've been following you. And as a Black woman in business, you know, you were saying about how rare it is for you to be a Black founder who's really successful and profitable, and who are your role models? How many role models are there out there for you? And that really means a lot to me as a mum of 2 mixed race girls, because I want them to have role models to look up to, and shine a light on the things that they want to pursue. What would you say to people who are watching, and how can we bring more equality in the workplace, and what do we need to be doing moving forward? And also, you know, feel free to talk about certain experiences that you've had in relation to all this.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a difficult question, because I feel like there are seminars on this every single day, and no one's really determined an answer. And I think that's part of the problem, right? Is that there is so much talk about DEI, and like it's got a terminology now, and it's like, you know, there's all these training on it. But at the end of the day, I don't think anything will really change unless people actually care. Like, and I think that's the thing, is that you could have endless DEI trainings, you could have endless checklists of things that you need to do and to diversify your workplace. But if you actually don't really care about it, it's not going to happen. And like, yeah, sure, you might have your like token Black person, or token Asian person, or token women, or token LGBTQ, or whatever your criteria is for your sense of diversity. You're only doing it to fit as criteria. You're not doing it because you actually want your team to be diverse. And what I think people don't realize is that diversity doesn't mean a diversity of demographics. You could be from all different races, genders, sexuality, whatever backgrounds, and still not have diversity in thinking. For me, it's diversity in thinking that's important, is that you need to have people thinking different ways. So that's also includes socioeconomic backgrounds, it's cultural backgrounds. It doesn't mean that you, just because you look different, that you're going to have differing opinions. Like, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was asking for his opinion, and I said, I don't know why I'm not bothering to ask you, because we have the same brain. Like, we're basically, I'm asking myself. But he's a straight white male, like from a different like caste background as me, and you'd think that therefore, oh, he's completely different. He's not. Like, we pretty much think the same way, and we act the same way. We're very, very similar. So actually, you're not going to get diversity when you have the two of us together. And I think that's the problem. And I think that, you know, I don't think that diversity in a lot of industries will ever change just because it's dominated by certain demographics, and they have no care in changing it. And I think that, like, we are sitting here how many years later, and I think that obviously things have changed, things obviously have improved, and I am grateful every single day that I do not live in the olden days when, you know, where there was slavery and there was all this kind of stuff. And even take, you know, growing up 30, 40 years ago, I still am super grateful that I didn't grow up then. But at the same time, we have had so many years and so many people talking about this stuff for years and years and years, and it still hasn't really changed. And in some industries, it's gone backwards. Like, it's not even helping. And there are certain things that will cause a recession in terms of attitude for this sort of stuff. And it just becomes another terminology. And I think that then, It is
and
so
very
exhausting.
exhausting.
Oh my God, it's
very
so
exhausting.
exhausting.
I mean, let's take a pause then. I believe that teams need to pause, because you want to see change. You're talking about change management and you're bringing in new things. We need creativity to think outside the box, just as we need this diversity. And if we're trying to lead a team, pausing and looking at the demographic of thought leaders and attitudes and cultural backgrounds and socio-economic backgrounds, all these things, I don't want it to sound, because the word play can sound very jovial and it's just, oh, go and play football. But I believe play and creativity, play and curiosity. So a child has to be, that children are curious, aren't they? And I don't want people to lose that curiosity as they come up into the workplace, because that's when all the great ideas come. And this acceptance we've been chatting about as well. When you do your networking events, you're accepting people as they are, come as you are. And then imagine teams if they were pausing, being accepting, having that open attitude, and then able to create a safe space for people to throw in their ideas, whether they're great, whether they're, need work. That they're the kind of environments that I know I enjoy being in. How about you?
Yeah, I love that sort of stuff. And I think that you said the word acceptance, and I think that's really important. But I think it's really difficult because, like I said, I still think it comes down to what people genuinely want as well. Because I even think like there are lots of programs that are applauded in businesses and teams where like they have like cultural days where you're learning about different cultures, and I think
schools, don't they?
Yeah, and I think it's really nice. I think it is really nice that they learn about it, and it is important. But at the same time, not everyone wants that. For example, something that I do in my team, so I'm actually half Jamaican and half Chinese, and so I have different cultures in me naturally, and I'm born in England, so I've got that's why I think I'm so interested in different cultures, because I have so much diversity within me alone. So one of the things I do with my team is that every Chinese New Year I give ang paos, so they're the red packets with money in it, to my team and be like, happy Chinese New Year. And I did this one year to my team, and I put a fair amount of cash in there, let's put it that way. And I had one member of the team accept it, but then he felt that I was forcing my cultural like reference onto him. He felt like he didn't like it. He actually quit the next day. So I don't know. I mean, he accepted the money though, which I thought was interesting. But he also mentioned it he was a copywriter, and he mentioned it during Black History Month. He didn't like writing about it. And he felt like I was pushing my culture onto him. That's what he said. So, both when he was accepting the Chinese New Year package and when he had to write about Black History Month, he didn't like it because he felt the culture was being pushed onto him and he didn't think it was right. And he even wrote to me and said he was very, very uncomfortable with like writing about these topics, because he said that his family knew that he was a copywriter there and he didn't want his family to know he was writing about these topics. And, I was so baffled by this. I had no idea, but I respected his, opinion and just, took him off that project. But I don't know if I was right to do that. And I feel like I chose the easy route in terms of just like, rather than dealing with this situation, I just sort of like, okay, if you're uncomfortable with it, I never want someone to do anything they're uncomfortable with, regardless of what it is. But then I thought, why is this? And is it okay to just say I don't want to learn about this, or I don't want to talk about this, and it's part of your job? And it felt weird to me, and it was never, I never want to push anything on anyone, not at all. It was really just to be like, this is what I celebrate in my culture, and it was a nice thing to do, like with terms of like Chinese New Year. And I would find that like a normal, when you go to someone's house and they're like Mexican, they serve you a certain dish, or like, I get to people's Filipinos house, like, and they serve you their dishes, or they tell you about their traditions and what they do, and you respect that because you're in their home. So for me, it's always been about that, and so I was quite surprised, and it sort of made me reflect on different things like this, and again, I see it now in places. At the end of the day, they have to want it, and most people don't want it. Like, well, I say most people, I correct that. Some people don't want it, right? And they're never going to, and you're never going to be able to push that on a company. And so with a team being able to do this, you're never going to please everyone with anything you do, and it's just always going to be really difficult, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I wonder if that's that kind of pausing to attune piece, to really know your teams, isn't it? Because it's like when people say, "Oh, do you do workshops? Can you just come in and do a workshop, a playful workshop, and get us all doing X?" And I'm like, I don't work like that. I pause, I get to know the team and their needs, and then we create something that's going to work for you. Because if you have someone who's just lost their mum, or someone who's just come off alcohol and you're telling them to go to the pub, or someone who can't swim and you're telling them to go in rowing boats, it's like you say, you can't please everyone. It doesn't mean we should do nothing though, does it? And it's just sort of doing what we have with the capacity, in our capacity. Maybe we're capable of doing this, and this and this, but I know I have a smaller, limited capacity a lot of the time. And I know a lot of my Black friends, when it was the George Floyd season, and that sounds horrible, but they're all...
What I think people don't realize is that diversity doesn't mean a diversity of demographics. You could be from all different races, genders, sexuality, whatever backgrounds, and still not have diversity in thinking. For me, it's diversity in thinking that's important, is that you need to have people thinking different ways. So that's also includes socioeconomic backgrounds, it's cultural backgrounds. It doesn't mean that you, just because you look different, that you're going to have differing opinions. Like, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was asking for his opinion, and I said, I don't know why I'm not bothering to ask you, because we have the same brain. Like, we're basically, I'm asking myself, but he's a straight white male, like from a different class background as me, and you'd think that therefore, oh, he's completely different. He's not. Like, we pretty much think the same way and we act the same way. We're very, very similar. So actually, you're not going to get diversity when you have the two of us together.
The trauma just came up for them, and they couldn't go out the house, some of them, and they were exhausted, and this kind of exhaustion, and people were asking them to speak all the time about this topic, and I really felt for them. I felt challenged. I was married to a Black guy, and I hadn't even had a discussion about white privilege until then. It's just like, it was a really valuable time and a learning time for me. And I guess if we're talking about learning, pausing and learning, connecting with these experiences, and sometimes these trainings, if they're really good, help people to connect with the experience of others. So like you were giving us the experience of that Chinese New Year. This is what it's like to receive thing. This is what it's like to eat the food, but also this is what it's like to feel awkward when you try and get a plaster and they don't come in your skin color, or this is what it feels like when someone touches your hair and you haven't asked them to. It's these kinds of things that if we don't pause to educate ourselves, we're never going to grow, and we're never going to have a happier and healthier society. I think it goes with mental health as well, doesn't it? These threat responses that come up in us, if we learn about polyvagal theory, I've got this amazing person, a couple of people on the podcast actually in other episodes talking about polyvagal theory. If we understand, oh, so this is how my stress response works in my body, then you can start spotting the signs a bit earlier, so you don't end up erupting in a rage. You can notice the frustration, the irritation, the heart starting to beat hard, faster, and know those strategies to calm it down again. So absolutely, I'm still learning. As I say, I'm still on this journey, and very ignorant, I'm sure, in many areas, but I don't want to stay here. It's all about growth and connection. So where, yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say, but that's the key you've just mentioned, that growth word, and I think that that's in all of what you just said. I think it's so true. But the difference is that you want to learn. You acknowledge that you have got things to learn, and even though, like you said, you've been married to a black guy for all these years and you never even really thought about it, it's not because you're racist, it's not because you're complacent with it, it's just because you just weren't aware, because you've never had those conversations. And that doesn't make you a bad person, that just makes you uneducated about the topic because it's just never been brought up. And that's the same with a lot of people. The difference is you're willing to learn about it and you're willing to listen, and there's a difference between hearing people and actually listening properly. And that's, I think that's what I think the difference is. Some people just don't want to learn. And I think we were talking about tailoring experiences before, like you were saying about the people who, you know, doing rowing trips and stuff, and I think that's another key thing, is that you have to really listen who you're talking to, because it will be different. And that's, again, the same thing with the difference between the club that I'm trying to run. I believe it's not about those generic experiences. It's not about running a generic event, like you said, and hoping it pleases everyone, because there'll be people who just won't really get anything out of it. And I think it's the same when people talk about branding. If you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. And I think that's it. If you're creating an event for everyone, you're creating an event for no one. So you'd rather niche it down and talk to people. And that's what I believe in, a personalized experience. So when I'm talking to people now, it's not like I'm just generically thinking, oh, what do entrepreneurs need? I'm like, what do my members need? And I'm like actually having a conversation with every single one of them, saying, who do you want to talk to? What are your current pain points? What would help solve them? What type of events do you want to run? And then getting the right people who all believe in those answers and putting them together, because everyone else, they don't need to come to that. And that's what it's about. I think it's understanding the right people. So then you're having everyone with a growth mindset, like you were saying, you want to grow. And there's something beautiful about that, because then you don't have those people who will be ignorant, who won't care about that sort of thing, and ruin it for others. And actually imagine having a team of people who are just all willing to learn and be there for each other. And that's kind of my vision. And I hope that, you know, just being surrounded by people with growth mindset is so much more beautiful.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. It's like a garden. Just, you know, sow the seeds, let it grow how it wants to grow. You don't have to be too prescriptive, actually.
No.
And you don't have to have all the answers. If you're running something, I just hope this conversation inspires people who are listening, who are maybe thinking about an idea or starting a business or starting a new way of living, to have to go for it and not feel like it has to be perfect. Have you ever had those kind of things where perfectionism gets in the way and it just absolutely railroads you in business or in life?
Yeah, that's literally the story of my life. I mean, that is it. I'm just honestly like, that is it's my biggest problem. It always has been. And that's you know, even with this club that I've launched, I actually tried to launch it 4 years ago, and I really wanted to do it then, and actually COVID hit, and in a way it was a blessing because I wasn't ready to do it. But then I sort of left it and I didn't do it, and I was like, do you know what, the world needs this. I tried to join other clubs, and actually I tried to support them because I thought, actually it's easier, I'll help them grow and create this place that I really want to be. And they just didn't have the ethics behind it. All they care about is growing their membership and not actually caring about their members. And they just sort of, you know, the classic, they get a new member in and then they ghost them, and then once I've got the money in, why do they need to talk to them anymore? And it was like, on to the next person, like it was this membership conveyor belt. And for me, it just didn't sit right with me. So I thought, screw it, I'm just going to do my own thing. And like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I was thinking, okay, well, other entrepreneurs get what it's like to be scrappy and to like not get things right. And actually, if you're learning from it, but if you do it for the right reasons and you're doing it for the right intentions, people are going to be okay with that. People make mistakes, right? So I'm going to be learning, but I want to be there for the members and I want to make it the most amazing thing. And I think if people know that, they'll forgive my mistakes, right? They'll understand that I'm trying to make this a better place. But if I'm just there like trying to take all the money and not really care and then screw up, then they're going to be less sympathetic. And I think that's with everything. If you do things for the right reasons, and the perfectionist thing, it's the same with my podcast. I delayed that for 1.5 years because I wanted it to look perfect, and I was like, I am missing out on amazing conversations like this one with great people who I just think have so much to bring to the world. I'd much rather do it in a scrappy, unprofessional, like what is unprofessional these days, but whatever way it is, like I'd rather just get those conversations out there because the world needs to hear them. And even if it is in a you know, and not the most chiseled look or whatever, it's still an interesting conversation and someone's going to benefit from it out there. So I'd much rather go out there and do it. So I absolutely do want people to hear this and be like, right, I'm just going to go out there and do it, because what is the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that could happen is that, okay, doesn't really go to plan. You feel a bit silly for a little bit, but you usually forget about it because something else more silly comes along later. And, you know, then you sort of like, okay, but you always learn something. And what's the best thing that can happen? That everything you ever wanted comes true. Like, come on, it's like, you know, the biggest thing is like, it's just so, if there's something you really want to do, go for it, because the highs are way, way, way bigger than the lows that could possibly be. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, permission to play your way, baby.
Exactly.
Totally my thing. Yeah, allowing ourselves, giving ourselves the permission to fail, fall on flat on our face, get really muddy, get really messy, and then get up again, have a laugh, and go, oh, that didn't work.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're totally up for that. Well, I've hardly asked you any of the questions I normally ask in my podcast, but they just don't really feel like they're in the flow. But I would love to see if you do want to comment on education system, because I know you've been a part of that. Tell me about your journey as a teacher. Who do you teach? What age group, or was it?
So I've been I sort of, before my first business out of university, I started my own teaching agency actually. So I ran that for several years, and I was teaching. So that was really teaching kids for their 11 plus exams as a bit, and then GCSEs and A levels. So I was teaching kind of kids around those sort of age groups. So it's really like 10 to 11, 15, 16, and then 17, 18. So those are the kind of three sections. But I still am like a professional chess coach as well. So I teach kids, and actually those kids are like, they start from age 4. So I do a lot of kids who are really, really young, but the average age I teach, I guess, ages 6 to 11. That's probably the average age of the kids I teach. So yeah, I'm still very much in the education system, I guess, in terms of teaching.
That's amazing. Chess is a beautiful way in. It's a beautiful way to connect. I went to a school in Sheffield, I think, one time with a lot of boys who'd been excluded from school, and one of the ways that they brought in calm time to reconnect if they'd had a really tough day is playing a game of chess with the tutor. And I know that one of my daughters has absolutely loved chess. It's a beautiful way of stretching your brain and getting you to think strategically. But I'm wondering if you could bring something into the education system as a whole. Like, what would you want to see more of or less of in schools as they are today in the UK?
Oh my God, where do I start? Yeah, I mean, I could do like 10 hours of this. I would almost rewrite the entire education system if I could, you know. There's so many things, and I've done it all. I did have that, like, I went to a private school, I went to university, I've done multiple degrees. Like, I am still very much about education and higher education. I do think there's definitely an importance for it. But there were so many gaps in our education system. It's ridiculous. I think that for the shortest answer I'll give is that I believe that more real life skills should be incorporated, like even just social skills, mindset skills, like things that prepare you, that I teach now as part of entrepreneurship. And it's not just for entrepreneurs, like things like resilience, like, you know, like you're saying, like, how do you bounce back from setbacks, all the things we just talked about. Fear of failure. Everyone's scared of failing. Every single person is scared of failing, whether it's like the exam that you've got at school, or whether it's like missing a shot in football and be like, you feel like you failed your team. There's everyone's scared of failing. Do we ever get taught that at school? No. We get pleasantries like, oh, it's just a game. Oh my God, does that rile me up? Like, if you genuinely care about your sport and someone says to you at the end of it, it's just a game, I want to flip them the bird so hard. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, it's just like, if you genuinely care, don't say that to someone. Like, it's not just a game. So some people, it's their livelihood, and actually for the professionals, it is their life. So don't say that to someone. And it's like, how do we handle loss? Because I don't think it's taught at school. So resilience, and I think it's like, you know, even things like risk taking, like, you know, learning. We do statistics, to a certain level or whatever, but actually how do you apply that in real life situations, like again in business, and what a massive thing that is in business in terms of like, you know, when to take risks, because people say, oh no, avoid risk, play safe, it's better be sensible. No, it doesn't always better be sensible. The best the most successful companies in the world are that way because they took risks, because they were innovative and they saw the risk. But again, it's how do you calculate that? And you know,
and curiosity, like, and they thought outside the box. Yeah,
exactly.
They need those creative skills. Yeah,
those sort of skills, I believe, and obviously I'm naturally biased towards entrepreneurship because this is what I teach, but it applies to every single person, whether whatever job you are in, whether you're going to be like a hairdresser or whether you're going to be a football player, whether you're going to be a librarian, whatever your passion is, you will still want to do all those things and learn all those things, and exactly bring it passion, right? People have a passion, but some days you don't want to do your job, even no matter how much you love it. How do you get up on days like that? How do you keep that motivation? That's what we should be learning, and that's what we should be taught, that actually it's okay to have those days. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, it doesn't mean that you're lazy because you need a time off, like all those things that teach us how to be a better person or how to love ourselves more. I think that is what we should be learning, because it's just like so many of us leave school, you know, because they've been bullied or because, you know, something's happened, and how do we learn to love ourselves more? Because I was never taught that. I struggled with that, and I've had to find that out in my 30s, like, you know, and that's far too late, in my opinion. I think that those are the things that we should be taught at school, because everything else can be picked up nowadays from like YouTube, or, you know, whether people don't read books or not, they could pick it up on YouTube. But those things are the things that we really need help with from a young age, because how we get crafted at that age is so important for how we have lived experiences later.
It really is, isn't it? It's so pivotal, those early years. And I'm loving this passion, and I'm loving what you said. I think you're coming from such a depth, and you really do get it because you've seen so much firsthand. How do you pause though? You've got all this energy, but I'm sure, like you say, you've had those days where you just feel maybe a little bit drained or a little bit fed up, or I've been asked that again. You know, we were talking about Women's Day recently, and you've been asked to speak for free, and you're like, oh man. So I love that poster, by the way. I was like, yes, preach. So what do you do personally? Let's go back to Sabrina. How do you function? How do you find balance? Because you're juggling a lot. You're launching things. You're running agencies. You've also got a life. You've got this fiance. What do you do to pause and relax, or maybe play?
Good question, because I feel like the other day I was saying, oh, I love watching Netflix, and that's our downtime. My partner and I, we watch Netflix, a lot of Netflix together, shows, and then I love reading. And then one of my friends said to me, you do realize that those two are both heavily stimulating for your brain, and you know that's not you really relaxing. I'm like, oh, like, I'm just like, that was me telling me I'm relaxing, and actually no, I'm not, by doing that. I think the time when I did it, and I did it this morning, was really nice, because I felt like my brain just wasn't in the right space. And I think that, you know, even when people will say go for a walk, it's amazing, and I do, and I go for walks, and I have this beautiful dog, luckily, so I take my beautiful dog for walks or whatever. It's amazing. But then, you know, you have a tendency to put your headphones on, you listen to a podcast, you listen to an audiobook, or you listen, you know, you're getting stimulated again. So I think the way that I do it is I genuinely just go for a walk without anything. I don't look at my phone, I don't listen to anything, and I'm just at one with my thoughts. And whether that's like a form of meditation, because I think people do a lot of meditating, I think I just love being by nature. And I go for a walk generally along the canal. I'm lucky enough to have that. I walk down the canal and into a park, and I just walk around the park, and I just come back, and that's it. And it's probably only about 20 minutes, but I do that, and it resets so many things in my brain. And I can't tell you how many times I've come back suddenly super clear on what I need to get done, or suddenly all the things I was worried about have been put into perspective, because actually I've somehow like reframed it, or I found a solution for it, or because I'm not injecting myself with all this information, and it's like my brain is suddenly just settled a little bit and is just calming itself. And I think it just needs that break from, because even talking to someone, having those conversations, they are all stimulating for your brain, and I think you have to just do nothing. And for me, like, that's the simplest thing that almost everyone can do. I say almost everyone because I was unable to physically walk for like 2 years almost. So I appreciate walking a lot more now that I can. But I think that, you know, other things that I love to do is like go to a spa and just lie there by the pool and just relax. But again, that's a luxury that most people won't be able to do. And so I feel like being outside in some form of just fresh air and nature is unbelievable. So I would say that whether you're walking or not, and if you're unable to do that, if you can get outside and just be without devices, without any sort of other distractions, external distractions, and that includes other people talking to you, just be by yourself. That's my way of resetting.
It's lovely. It's really lovely that you've got to the place where you can be with yourself, and that's okay. Because sometimes we can be in a place where we're not okay with that, and it's just too much when everything slows down. With all sorts. So really lovely to hear that you find nature relaxing too. I think probably everybody on my podcast has mentioned nature because we're meant to be outside. We're kind of built for outdoors too. So that's lovely to hear that you're doing that, and you're cultivating a flow of making sure you've got that time in nature, and that you're just finding that rhythm that works for you, because everyone's so different, aren't they? So coming down to land, I think I could probably talk to you for another 4 hours. I absolutely have loved this conversation, and it's been really reflective, and I'm wondering after talking with you, if I said to you those words, pause, play, connect, for you, what would that philosophy mean to you? And do you find that you're naturally using that kind of rhythm within your own life?
I'd love to say yes, because that would be the ideal, but I know that I'm guilty of bad habits too. What I would say is that I'm way more conscious of that these days and what I want to achieve, and I'm definitely working towards that. But as you said, I'm also just launched this new startup, and launching a startup at the same time as running an established business, at the same time as running a TEDx event and coaching chess, is very busy, and so like it's not that easy to do, and I'm aware that this is going to be a busy period of time in my life, but I do think that I do try and pause every day. I use, like, for example, the Balance app, because they give you a year's free as well, which is really amazing. And just to have no barriers to this sort of thing. And I try to do that. And I try to just have some time outside. And I love spending time with my dog and just like without devices. So I do try to believe that I do that. And then playing, I do try to, again, spend as much time as I can with my partner, just ourselves without devices, although we do like to watch Netflix. But again, I feel like it's just nice. Like we just, you know, you snug on your sofa, you do that sort of thing.
Got that physical contact, haven't you?
Yeah.
And obviously when you see adult play, there's sex and all that kind of stuff. And that's also play, and that's pausing to play and build connection, right?
Exactly. and we are actually great in the fact that we do make a lot of time to spend together, and you know, I just had someone, for example, ask me to meet up this weekend. I was like, no, it's my weekend with my partner, and I just don't want to give that up, because actually that's really important to me, and I'm so busy during the week, and I don't get to have many evenings with quality time, because I'm usually doing an event or out networking and, you know, that sort of stuff, and I just think like it's just so lovely to have that special time. And so so I feel like I am trying to do it. I would like it to be a different ratio, of course, and I will work towards that, but I also am quite realistic with what I want to do, and I do make sure I do have all those three things, but maybe not in the ratio I want it to be someday.
That's cool. I think we're all in there. We're all working towards it. But isn't it cool? We can just find our flow and try things out. If they don't work, we try something else. We just keep playing with ideas. Love it. Well, I think we're going to come to a close, but I want people to know where to find you. And you've got a couple of websites, haven't you?
The knobs, which stands for no bullshit, is actually n0bs.com. So it's like having zero bullshit. So it's all n0bs.com. The agency is known as the No Bullshit Agency. We will actually be changing our domain eventually to n0bsagency.com. But for now, it's wearecomplexcreative.com. But you can also find all of that information just by finding me, which is sabrinachevans.com, which is probably the easiest thing. that also has all my social media handles, and I feel like I'm on most social profiles, so it's probably better to just go to sabrinachevannes.com and find all of that information, because you'll find the link to the club, the agency, you know, all my social handles, and that's probably the simplest thing to do.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything
No
else
problem.
that's coming up for you that you just want to end with?
No, I'm super busy all the time. There's always something, and I just would also love to hear back from listeners as well about what they think they got as valuable from this podcast, because that's what I believe that people should be doing, is listening to their audience. And I want to know what you found useful today, what you found helpful, because then I know that I could be sharing that more with people, and I have no idea what I say that's valuable. And like, I think value is a really subjective word, and what I might think is useful to people, other people think is not. So I'd love some feedback. So if anyone's listening and wants to drop me a line about what they've learned today, then I'd love to hear from you.
What a beautiful thing to say. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, and have a really play-filled week.
Thank you. Bye.